Yo, it's your boy Warbo. New to the YouTube game. Got another reaction for y'all today. Let's begin. Alright, question. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you ate your favorite food all the time? Let's say you ate french fries all the time for the rest of, let's say you ate pizza. The only thing you ate was pizza for the rest of your life. All the time. Like literally. Whatever it is. What was it? Whatever it was, chicken nuggets, french fried noodles. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you ate that all the time for years? Your favorite food, whatever it was. Well, in the Infographics show, got you covered for one of a man eats only mac and cheese for 17 years. And this is what happened to him. Let's check it out.
The same exact food with no modifications. It might seem like an impossible question to answer, but for Austin Davis, the only food he has eaten in 17 years has been mac and cheese. His story is much more complicated than you might think. What causes someone to eat only mac and cheese for 17 years of their life? Is it even possible? Will this diet cause lasting damage? Let's find out. When you think of mac and cheese, you may think of specialty dishes you can get in restaurants, or a family recipe that includes breadcrumbs and bacon. But this is not the type of mac and cheese Austin has been eating. Instead, he eats only boxed mac and cheese. Not only that, but 9 times out of 10, the mac and cheese is just traditional Velveeta shells and cheese. Imagine only eating the same brand and type of mac and cheese every day for 17 years. This might seem unthinkable to you, but for Austin, it's a reality. Austin is addicted to mac and cheese. He has avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, which in his case was brought on by events from his past. But before we get into the surprising reasons about how and why this man came to only eat mac and cheese, let's take a look at what his diet actually consists of. Austin prefers Velveeta shells and cheese, but in dire situations, he'll eat other types of mac and cheese. The reason he prefers Velveeta is because it consistently tastes the same. There's been little to no change in the recipe for 17 years, apparently. When in dire straits, Austin will eat deluxe 4-cheese and Kraft mac and cheese, but for 17 years, Velveeta has been his go-to. Austin has never bought anything
Yo, what kind of cheese did you like, Kraft or Velveeta? Let me know.
other than mac and cheese for himself at the grocery store. Even while standing in line, he's never tempted to buy impulse items like candy bars or bags of chips. Austin eats mac and cheese, and only mac and cheese. When describing his eating habits, there are some foods that cause him more anxiety than others. For example, there's something about meat that Austin finds particularly hard to stomach. When he's in the meat section of the grocery store, he sees it as a form of hell. When he describes meat, he thinks about how eating muscle and veins freaks him out. Plenty of people are vegetarians and live healthy lives, so meat isn't absolutely necessary. But what about fruits and vegetables? Austin doesn't eat those either. Fruits and veggies are less repulsive to him than meat, but he will still only eat mac and cheese. His doctor unsurprisingly warned him that as he gets older, a broader diet will be necessary. Only eating mac and cheese can sustain the body for a time, but needs to be supplemented, and this is where Austin runs into trouble. He's literally addicted to mac and cheese.
What?
Who is USAA made for? It's made for him, a veteran who honorably served. And it's made for her. She's serving now. We also make USAA for military spouses and their kids. Become a member. Get an insurance quote today.
It's like an addiction to alcohol or drugs. His brain is chemically wired to only see mac and cheese as a viable option. There are a few more idiosyncrasies that we need to explore before going into more depth as to what caused Austin to develop this eating disorder. The mac and cheese is almost always cooked in the same pot. It's Austin's go-to pot. In special circumstances, he'll use his grandma's pot, but this is rare and changes the taste slightly. If someone else makes mac and cheese for him not using his pan, he can tell. Austin admits he'll
You're
still eat
dirty.
it, but it's not the same. It's also important to Austin that he keeps a week of mac and cheese stocked in the cabinet at all times. It would be disastrous to run out because his body physically wouldn't let him eat anything else. Austin explains experiencing other foods in this way. He starts by stressing over trying something new. This ramps into full-blown anxiety before the food even touches his lips. His gag reflex is ready to kick in at a moment's notice. The way Austin describes trying new foods is like a bell curve of anxiety. The closer the new food comes to his mouth, the higher up the anxiety curve he gets. The pinnacle happens once the food enters his mouth, regardless of if he likes the taste or texture, and he starts to gag. If he does not like the taste or texture, he vomits. Either way, his body rejects the food. Once he moves away from other foods and back to mac and cheese, anxiety slides back down the bell curve and dissipates. Now, you might have some questions, like why does Austin's body only allow him to eat mac and cheese? And can he survive on just that diet for much longer? Or maybe you're wondering what changed in his
Let that sink in for me. You train your body literally to eat one type of food all the time. So when you try to eat something else, your body rejects it. That's crazy.
life that caused him to stop eating all other food except mac and cheese? These are questions that have answers, but the answers might surprise and shock you. The reason that Austin's body will not allow him to eat anything but mac and cheese is because he has avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. This is a rare eating disorder where the brain has been programmed to eat only one particular food. It's like a very extreme case of addiction to one specific thing. It was not until Austin was out of high school that he found out about the disorder. The way he explains finding out about avoidant restrictive food intake disorder is that it was like a huge weight had been lifted off him, because now maybe he could be treated. Until that point, he thought that he was just quirky or an incredibly picky eater. Austin did not choose to only eat mac and cheese. As you can imagine, this diet caused stress in his social life. He didn't feel comfortable eating out or around other people because he would have to explain that he could only eat that food. Then when he found out about avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, his life changed. He reached out to therapists who specialized in eating disorders. Unfortunately, living in the United States, it's hard for Austin to find a specialist who will take his insurance. Insurance companies oftentimes market mental health as more of a luxury than a necessity. So although Austin had pinpointed the problem that was restricting from eating other foods, he could not afford the solution. Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder is a mental block. But can Austin survive on eating only mac and cheese for the rest of his life if he has to? What are the negative effects of this one food diet? Surprisingly, Austin's doctor informed him that for now his diet was okay as long as he took some vitamins to supplement it. However, as he gets older, his diet of strictly mac and cheese will end up killing him. There are a couple of...
So that means he can eat mac and cheese all he wants for now, but he gotta take some sort of supplements like, vitamin pills or multivitamin pills to help him, sustain his body.
Of problems with eating only mac and cheese, or just one food in general. There's no single food that has all the nutrients and vitamins that your body needs to survive. And in the case of mac and cheese, there are a lot of fats and cholesterol associated with it. Austin's diet was causing him to gain weight at an alarming rate.
Wow.
In order to combat the weight gain, Austin took up boxing. He sticks to a workout regimen that's rigorous and high intensity. This allows him to burn hundreds of calories every time he works out, offsetting what he takes in by only eating mac and cheese. Unfortunately, this workout routine will not be sustainable forever. There was a period of time when Austin stopped boxing, and he immediately started gaining weight. He reached an unhealthy weight level and out of necessity returned to his boxing routine. Eating only mac and cheese requires a lot of exercise just to keep the weight down. At this point, boxing is not optional for Austin but necessary.
Cheese is high cholesterol,
so eating a variety of food to solely mac and cheese 17 years ago. Unfortunately, as with most eating disorders, Austin's is connected to childhood trauma. During his childhood, Austin was diagnosed with PTSD from a number of altercations in his home. He was removed from the toxic environment by the Department of Children and Families and then was placed in the custody of his grandparents who raised him and helped him through the rest of his formative years. It was around that time that Austin's avoidant restrictive food intake disorder for only mac and cheese manifested itself. It's not 100% clear why Austin's brain retreated to the comforts of mac and cheese, but the way Austin describes his memories, it probably has to do with a sense of control. Austin remembers mac and cheese always being something he could look forward to and could make himself during turbulent times. Austin knew that no matter what was happening that day, he could always look forward to a bowl of mac and cheese for dinner. He also describes mac and cheese as a comfort food. He says there's something about the texture and the way it looks that's appealing to him, something that other food just doesn't have. The causes of Austin's avoidant restrictive food intake disorder are connected to his childhood trauma and the comfort that mac and cheese gave him. This is an incredibly rare and extreme reaction to events by his brain, but it was never within his control. It's important to remember that Austin didn't choose to be like this and that his eating habits have negatively impacted several parts of his life. Now you might be wondering if there are other people who have similar eating disorders as Austin. Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder is extremely uncommon, but it does happen. There are other people around the world.
Another ad.
What is myheritage.com? It's a website that helps me understand
Man, I bet I get a
Who
copy
eat
claim.
only one or two foods. We know that someone can survive off of mac and cheese for 17 years, as Austin has. We also know that trauma can induce eating disorders, and that the brain can exert immense control over someone's body and eating habits. Let's take a look at a few more examples of people eating only one type of food. If you found Austin's story of only eating mac and cheese for 17 years surprising, then you won't believe
Yeah.
some of these other people's eating habits. Jay Campbell only ate French fries for 15 years. Unlike Austin,
Wow.
Jay had a physiological issue that led her down the path of only eating one type of food. At age 12, Jay was diagnosed with gastroesophageal reflux. This meant that when she ate, her body would experience intense burning pain as the stomach acid flowed up into the esophagus. It's like having intense
What?
acid reflux every time you eat. For Jay,
That's
the only food that
painful.
didn't cause her stomach to flare up was French fries, and for 15 years, that's all she ate. Recently, she was diagnosed with a phobia of food and worked with psychologists to expand her diet. Although Dave Nunley
What?
does not eat the mac part of mac and cheese, he does eat the cheese part. In fact, Dave only eats cheese. His diet consists of plates of grated cheese, and like Jay, has been diagnosed with siphophobia, or a phobia of foods. This phobia can manifest itself as only being afraid of certain types of foods, or as in Dave's case, all types of foods except
That's
one. Now imagine
crazy.
eating only chicken nuggets every day. This was the diet of Stacey Irvine for 15 years. At the age of 17, she collapsed at work and had to be rushed to the hospital. You're probably not surprised that the reason she collapsed was because of the unhealthiness of her diet. The human body cannot survive on chicken nuggets alone. In
Of
fact,
course
the
not.
diet caused Stacey to develop anemia and for her veins to swell. This caused
Ooh.
constriction of blood vessels to vital organs and eventually led to her body shutting down until she was treated at the hospital. The doctors were
Ooh.
horrified to find out what her diet consisted of and told her that if she did not start eating fruits and vegetables, she would die. Derek Nance has taken the
Wow.
paleo diet to a whole new level. He only eats raw meat. Unlike Austin, his diet is
What?
by choice. Derek was battling constant nausea and found that eating raw meat helped with the symptoms. He now eats every part of an animal, so his diet's
How do eat raw meat help you with your sickness? What the?
not just one specific type of food. However, he does not eat fruits and vegetables. To get probiotic nutrients, Derek will even eat rotten meat. So technically, he eats bacteria as well. And this brings us back to
Oh.
Austin. Eating mac and cheese for 17 years is not healthy, but it's also not by choice. Austin's avoidant restrictive food intake disorder developed because of childhood trauma,
Wow.
so there's very little he can do to force his body to change his behavior. That being said, Austin has been working with therapists to find ways to manage the anxiety of eating other foods, so hopefully one day he can expand his diet. He said his goal is to be able to go to restaurants with his friends, order a meal other than mac and cheese, and eat it. Mental health is important and often not talked about enough. If you or someone you know has an eating disorder, please reach out to a doctor or therapist for help. You're not
Wow.
alone. Now check out what would happen if you only ate meat and nothing else. Or watch Do These Bipolar Disorder Symptoms Sound Familiar?
That's crazy. Wow. So every person's childhood has some sort of play on why they eat one type of food for years, which they eventually have to stop because you ain't gonna reach the age of 40. That's not funny, but that's crazy. It's always something your childhood trauma has some sort of long-lasting effect on how you live the rest of your life. And yet, the person that only eats French fries for 15 years, mac and cheese for 17 years, raw meat. I mean, that's something. I mean, the dude was eating raw meat with bacteria in it. And he doesn't even get sick. That's crazy. Whew. Good thing these people are willing to look to get some help because they know it's unhealthy and they know that they need to do something different. So that's a good thing about a lot of these people. But man, that's my reaction. Like and subscribe. Roll on out.